this is not like something that should be surprise to anybody, a surprise to anybody. Equal protection is the phrase that the anti-abortion freaks use to describe a requirement that they want to have put into law that killing a person, you or me, which is homicide, carries, let me start over. That killing a fetus, or to quote the U.S. Supreme Court, an unborn child, is the exact same thing as killing an actual born child or an adult. In other words, homicide. And down in Texas, the Texas Republican Party is putting together their platform this week. And one of the proposals, which looks like it's going to be built into their platform, is calling for, quote, equal protection. Now, two other states have tried this before. South Carolina and Georgia have both tried doing the same thing. They didn't succeed in either case. These were actually legislative attempts in South Carolina and Georgia, and they tried to pass laws saying that an abortion is homicide, essentially. That equal protection is given to unborn children as it is to real children. But this is, pretty straightforward, and they're right up front about it. I mean, one of the Republicans, this is State Representative Stephanie Klick, who is a Texas Republican, but she's not an anti-abortion absolutist, attacked her primary opponent, David Lowe, who's also a Republican who does want the equal protection law to be applied to abortion. She said, quote, the legislation he prefers would give the death penalty to women who had an abortion. I don't support that. What I support is the Republican Party of Texas platform on abortion, which is the same laws that protect you and me, protect everyone else, to include preborn children. I'm sorry, that's what he said in response. So she said, the legislation he prefers would give the death penalty to women who had an abortion. I don't support that. And he says, yes, you're right. He said, what I support is the Republican Party of Texas platform on abortion, which is the same laws that protect you and me and protect everybody else, to include preborn children. In other words, if you get an abortion in Texas, you can get a lethal injection. You can get put to death by the state. And these are not fringe groups anymore. I mean, there was once a time when this was very much the fringe, but no longer. I mean, since 2022, Republican lawmakers have introduced at least 26 bills calling for abortion to be considered homicide, and women who get abortions to be subject to life imprisonment or the death penalty. Pretty much every anti-abortion leader, this is Jessica Valenti is writing about this, by the way, over at her Substack newsletter, jessica.substack.com. She writes, pretty much every anti-abortion leader and organization in the country signed on to a letter last year calling for, quote, equal protection for children in the womb. And, not only, by the way, this has larger implications. It's not just women who get abortions. If a woman in Texas, if this becomes law, and again, this is the Texas is now the third state to suggest this should become law, or where Republicans are suggesting this should become law. And more than 22 pieces of legislation have been introduced in various states to make this law. None of them have succeeded so far. But if this becomes law, that fetuses have the same protection under the law as do children, actual children, and a pregnant woman is seen in a bar or restaurant having a sip of wine, she could be arrested for child abuse. If she smokes a cigarette, she could be arrested for child abuse. I mean, that's where this is going. And to take it even weirder, there have been several women who had the story. In fact, the stories that get a lot, the most high-profile stories about abortion in the media these days are stories of women who have such severely damaged, malformed, birth-defected fetuses that there's no way they could survive outside the womb, and yet the Republicans want to force them to give birth rather than have an abortion. I mean, there's we've all seen, in fact, we had one of those women on this program about a month ago, or maybe 2 or 3 months ago. Well, the Texas Republican Party has two other pieces to their platform that apply to abortion. One is that they want all children in the state to be forced to watch anti-abortion propaganda videos. And the second is that they want the state to, quote, close discriminatory loopholes that fail to protect preborn children suspected of having a fetal anomaly, end quote. In other words, if a woman is carrying a fetus that is known to have, profound birth defects that will cause it to die, they want to force her to give birth to that thing rather than have an abortion. I think just 5 years ago, before Trump was elected and started, putting over 300 right-wing judges on the courts, we would not have even imagined this was possible. This is how quickly things change when you put fascists in charge of a country. I mean, people were amazed at how quickly Hitler changed Germany, or Mussolini changed Italy, how quickly Modi is changing India right now. How quickly Xi changed China. We're seeing, now China didn't go from a democracy to something else, but things can change really rapidly when you have really committed politicians. Meanwhile, Project 2025, now Project 2025 is the plan for the next Republican president. It might be Trump in 2025, it might be J.D. Vance in 2028, or Ron DeSantis, or whoever runs for president in 2028 on the Republican side. But they want to eliminate requirements that health insurance provides for birth control, number one. Number two, they want to require insurers to cover, quote, fertility awareness-based methods of family planning. In other words, the rhythm method. They want your insurance company to tell you, instead of giving you birth control pills, we'll give you a brochure explaining that there is this, week-long period during the 4 weeks of your cycle when you're most likely to become pregnant. They also want, another part of Project 2025 is calling for funding a federal study into the dangers of birth control pills. The senior researcher associate at the Heritage Foundation, who's leading this project around conception, Emma Waters, she said, quote, I've been very concerned with just the emphasis on expanding more and more contraception. We want to make sure women are getting the thing that's best for them. Right. And Trump recently said, yeah, I'm looking at banning contraception. Now, he walked that back the next day. It's possible he didn't know what the word contraception meant. But, I'm guessing he heard the word in a conversation. The Trump administration had also overhauled the Title X program, which provides birth control, STD screenings, and reproductive services to low-income people. He basically ended all those services. Joe Biden reversed that, and Project 2025 calls for reversing Joe Biden's reversal. In other words, going back to where poor people can't get birth control, can't get screened for sexually transmitted diseases, can't get any kind of free reproductive services. Not the job of government to provide anything to poor people. Right. Also, inside the dangerous anti-democracy coalition forming to help Donald Trump. Robert Reich is writing about this. That's his headline over at, it's on alternate right now, but it was originally on his newsletter, robertreich.com, I believe is the newsletter. And I'll tell you about that on the other side of the break. And a lawmaker who actually conducted a tour the day before January 6th, showing people who showed up the next day as rioters how to break into the Capitol. He's going after the Capitol Police.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
This is nuts. I'll be right back with those stories and your calls in just a moment.